The laughter was the worst part. Not the freezing water rushing over her clothes, not the humiliation of standing waist-deep in a luxury hotel pool while dozens of wealthy guests stared at her, but the sound of people laughing as if her pain were entertainment. Sarah Mitchell stood trembling in the blue-lit pool at the Jefferson Estate in Beverly Hills, California, her white waitress shirt soaked against her skin and her black apron dragging heavily through the water. Just moments earlier, she had been carrying a silver tray of champagne when someone had deliberately shoved her from behind. The tray had flown into the air, glasses had shattered across the marble, and Sarah had disappeared beneath the water. When she surfaced, she expected someone to help. Instead, she heard laughter. But then, through the crowd, one man stopped smiling. A millionaire named Nathan Brooks stepped forward, and what he did next would leave every person at that party completely speechless. Before we continue, if you believe that kindness still matters, that people deserve second chances, and that someone's social status should never determine how they are treated, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes the same, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more emotional stories like this to life. Sarah had never imagined that one night could expose so much cruelty. She was 28 years old and had been working 2 jobs in Los Angeles just to keep her small apartment and help her younger brother, Caleb, finish community college. Her mother, Rebecca, had raised them alone after their father passed away years earlier, and Sarah had learned early that dignity was something you protected even when life gave you very little. She worked long shifts at the Jefferson Estate whenever private events were scheduled, carefully polishing glasses, carrying heavy trays, and smiling politely at guests who sometimes treated her as though she were invisible. She never complained because every paycheck mattered. That evening was supposed to be another ordinary shift. The Jefferson Estate belonged to a wealthy businessman named Nathan Brooks, although Sarah had never met him personally. The party was filled with investors, celebrities, executives, and their families. Crystal lights hung from the trees surrounding the pool, soft music floated through the warm California night, and expensive cars lined the driveway. Sarah moved quietly among the guests, doing everything she could to make sure nobody needed anything. Then she crossed paths with Victoria Reynolds, the spoiled daughter of one of Nathan's business associates. Victoria had been drinking heavily and was surrounded by friends who laughed at everything she said. Earlier that evening, Sarah had accidentally bumped Victoria's chair while serving another guest. She immediately apologized and offered to replace the drink that had spilled. Victoria accepted the apology, but her expression suggested she had not forgotten the embarrassment. Later, as Sarah walked toward the pool carrying a tray, Victoria noticed her approaching. What happened next looked like an accident to everyone who wanted to believe it was one. Victoria stepped backward directly into Sarah's path. One of her friends moved closer. Sarah lost her balance. The tray tilted, and before she could react, a powerful shove sent her straight into the pool. For several seconds, Sarah was completely disoriented underwater. Her shoes slipped from her feet, her apron tangled around her legs, and the cold shock made it difficult to breathe. When she finally surfaced, she heard laughter echoing around the pool. A few guests raised their phones. Someone whispered that the waitress had ruined the party. Victoria stood at the edge pretending to be shocked, while her friends struggled to contain their laughter. Sarah looked around desperately, hoping someone would extend a hand. No one did. She tried to climb out, but her wet shoes and heavy uniform made it difficult. Her arms shook as she reached for the edge. Then she noticed a small group of guests staring at her with uncomfortable expressions. They clearly knew what had happened, but nobody wanted to get involved. Sarah lowered her eyes, fighting back tears. She had spent years protecting her dignity, and now it felt as though it had been taken from her in front of everyone. Then the music stopped. Nathan Brooks had entered the courtyard. He was not dressed like the other guests. He wore a simple dark suit without flashy jewelry or anything designed to announce his wealth. At 42, he had built a technology company from almost nothing, but few people at the party knew how much of his personal fortune had come from years of sacrifice. Nathan looked toward the pool and immediately noticed Sarah. He also noticed the broken glasses, the wet uniform, the frightened expression on her face, and the guests who were laughing. His expression changed. He walked directly toward the pool and held out his hand. Sarah hesitated, embarrassed and afraid, but finally reached for him. Nathan pulled her out of the water and removed his jacket, placing it around her shoulders. Instead of asking whether she had damaged anything, he asked whether she was hurt. That simple act made Sarah's eyes fill with tears. Nathan then turned toward the crowd. He asked for the security footage. Suddenly, the laughter disappeared. Victoria's smile vanished completely. She tried to explain that Sarah had simply slipped, but Nathan had already seen enough. The security team brought up the footage on a nearby monitor, and everyone watched the truth unfold. The recording showed Victoria deliberately moving into Sarah's path, while one of her friends pushed her from behind. It had never been an accident. The courtyard became silent. Nathan did not shout. He did not insult Victoria. Instead, he calmly explained that wealth gave people opportunities, but it never gave them permission to humiliate someone who worked for a living. He ordered the event staff to make sure Sarah received medical attention and told his manager that the guests responsible would never be invited to another event at his property. But Nathan wasn't finished. He noticed that Sarah was still staring at the broken tray on the floor. She kept apologizing for the glasses, even though none of it had been her fault. Nathan told her she had nothing to apologize for. Then he asked about her life, and Sarah reluctantly explained that she was working 2 jobs to help her brother finish school. Nathan listened carefully. A week later, Sarah received an unexpected letter. Nathan had created a paid hospitality management position within one of his companies and offered it to her, along with training and a scholarship fund for Caleb. He explained that he had not offered it because he felt sorry for her. He offered it because he had watched her work that night and saw something rare: responsibility, patience, and dignity under pressure. Months passed, and Sarah's life slowly changed. She left her second job, helped her brother continue his education, and eventually became a respected event coordinator. She never forgot the night she fell into that pool, but she also never forgot the man who reached out his hand when everyone else was laughing. 1 year later, Sarah returned to the Jefferson estate for another major event. She stood beside the same pool where she had once cried in humiliation. This time, however, she was wearing a professional suit and carrying a folder containing the plans for an important charity fundraiser. Nathan stood nearby, smiling proudly. Sarah looked at the water for a moment and realized something powerful. That night had not destroyed her. It had revealed who people truly were, and it had shown her that sometimes one act of kindness could change the direction of an entire life. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness matters, and subscribe for more stories about courage, dignity, and second chances. And before we end, I want to ask you something special. Comment. Kindness always wins. If you believe that no matter how difficult life becomes, we should never stop treating others with compassion. Because Sarah learned something that night that money could never buy. Humiliation may last for a moment, but kindness can stay with someone for a lifetime. And sometimes, the person standing alone in the crowd does not need your judgment. They simply need someone brave enough to reach out a hand.